Hello, happy election day, guys. I'm so sorry we were having some connectivity problems on Blackboard. In theory, Blackboard's great because you can put everything on it, but it does have a lot of snafus. It's not a business term or an education term. That's a Sarah Crim term. So I wanted to just get this up for you guys, and I'm gonna go over really quick your last quiz, so you have the responses and answers to that. And then we will start digging into chapter 12 and we'll look at our informative speech rubric, which is kind of hard to see from here, but I'll upload it for you. So you will have it accessible. So you can kind of start going over what the criterion will be for that. So I hope everyone is having a nice, relaxing election day. I'm like in an office. It's quiet. It's tranquil here. My Instagram is down today, so that's a huge blessing. It's keeping my sanity going, actually. So, yeah, if anyone has questions over quiz 2, chapters 5 and 11, everything should have been covered between the PowerPoints and then the teaching that I did on Thursday. So, you should have everything available in your notes. So just wanted to go over those really quick. I will do this in shotgun style really quickly. Culture, so question 1, mental software helps you understand the world, provides the framework that shapes the message you send and receive every day is called culture. That is what that entire chapter was based on, was how culture affects the lens through which we see the world, how we perceive things, how it can alter how we send and encode messages. And of course, we broke down different types of cultures within a work environment, and those types of cultures exist in everything we do nowadays. So which type of people are high on responsiveness and low on assertiveness? Remember, that was the grid we looked at where there were 4 of them. And you looked at responsiveness and assertiveness kind of on a scale and a cross section. So people that are amiable just means that you're agreeable. So that would make sense that they respond quickly, or they are continuing and responding, but they're not assertive. So if someone is amiable, they're just agreeable. They're easy to get along with. They're pleasing. That's kind of a southern wordism that gets tossed around. Gender is the cultural construct of what it means to be a man or a woman. Of course, we have a lot of conversations about sex versus gender in our society. And we discuss what is a construct that we decide as a society, or the individual decides as a society, which brings us into discussing whether America is individualistic or collectivistic. And this is where the question asks, is America individualistic, or what type of culture are we? We are majorly individualistic. The American dream within itself, where you're able to pursue your own ambitions and create a life based on the framework that you want, is that is directly, hold on one second, someone just texted me. Okay, so one of our classmates just texted me. So we are fully an individualistic society. So the next question was about context, whether it's something is low or high. A low context, they rely more on language and meaning of words. And so like a high context society would be more nonverbal cues or things that are kind of implied. We talked about generational differences. And so in the PowerPoint, they discussed millennials versus baby boomers versus Generation X. So millennials are Generation Y. And I believe that's anyone that's born from 1981 to 1996, which, by the way, is a huge spread. I was born in 83, not to give my age away, but I feel there's a big difference between someone born in 83 and someone born in 91. But they kind of bring about people born in that 15-year range tend to respect people, elders, or people in positions of authority when those people earn it. So it's not something where we necessarily just respect somebody simply because they're put in a position. We think that respect is earned. And so that's something that was indoctrinated in us, and we show that in different business relationships, whether it's our leaders or people that have been placed, in positions that manage us. So that's where millennials are a little different than baby boomers. You know, we're not necessarily down for do as I say. we like some authority and some logic as to why this person's in their position. So types of conversation rituals, adapting is not a form, but compliments and small talk and ritual apologies, those are all types of conversational rituals. Communication apprehension, that's one of the biggest takeaways from chapter 11 that I wanted you guys to focus on. Communication apprehension is a fear you have going into any situation. So we talked about people having different types of communication apprehension, whether it's interpersonal, intrapersonal. I don't know how you have interpersonal communication apprehension. Maybe you don't like talking to yourself, or you get nervous about what's going on in your head, but or intrapersonal, excuse me. So maybe you have communication apprehension for speaking. Maybe you have communication apprehension for speaking in a small group versus a large group. I tend to get more nervous in this smaller format than I do in a large room. In a large room full of 600 people, when I used to lecture at Texas Tech, we had 600 people. So I could just pivot and pay attention. If this person is blabbing and ignoring me, I can just pay attention to that person making eye contact with me. There's always at least one person listening in there. And so I do not mind speaking in really large formats. I don't care if people criticize me in that format, because there will at least be one kind, friendly, fun face giving me feedback. In a small group, or even sometimes this, you have no idea what the feedback is. So it's a little bit more unnerving for me. And everybody has some internal type of apprehension that they feel going into certain speaking or communication situations. So then we started looking at just the overview of presentations, how we are going to start preparing our presentation. And you guys know your informative is your first, right? This guy right here, that's going to be due next Sunday, the 15th, I believe the date is. Let me double check before I get it wrong really quick. So yes, I was right, the 15th. Remember, by end of day, have it submitted. Okay. So we started talking about that presentation, ways to build confidence, not procrastinating, knowing your audience, having the right speech environment, breathing techniques that you use for that. All of those are important techniques that you need to prepare for something. So analyzing your audience is important, kind of understanding the demographics of who's going to be in your audience. For this, we are all people in a business and professional environment, so you want to make sure that your content is professional and business related. It's not that I don't want to hear about your kids or things going on in your personal life. I definitely do, but in the context of picking a speech for this class, you definitely want to pick something that's business minded, right? Because that's what we're all here for. So we discussed introducing your speech. You need to have all your main ideas, establish credibility, grab your audience's attention, give them a reason to listen, make them excited to hear you. I know some of you guys are like, I'm just going to present something really basic. And so you're not thinking like, how is this going to be super exciting? But if you're only going to be speaking for 3 to 5 minutes, like try to make it as exciting as you possibly can, or make it worth the while of the people watching. So then we discussed ways that how a speech can be organized. You can go chronological, you can go spatial, you can go by topic, you can do any way that a natural organization exists. This speech I'm going to give you guys as an example on Thursday is going to be informative. Chronological. So I'm just going to go in time order. That's easy. If you're discussing like how a company was developed, or your personal work history, or your experience with something, chronological is great. It's easy. You just create this space, go through, make a timeline. We discussed verbal transitions, making sure that you're making a clear break between intro, your first point, your second point, your third point, your conclusion, right? And then we discussed how you will need to have an outline. So that is one of the things on here, 20 points, right? Okay, so it's 20 points. It's quite a bit more. It's more than a quiz. It's 5 points more than a quiz. And I will give you an example of what a speech outline needs to look like this week as well. So all of that's forthcoming. I also asked you guys what my alma mater is, and what you all know I went to Texas Tech for my undergraduate and my master's, and I got a post-baccalaureate secondary education cohort. So I spent a lot of time in West Texas, and I'm in Midland now. So I spent a lot of time in Lubbock, Texas, and I've spent a lot of money at that institution. So it's important that you all know that's from whence I'm coming. So I just wanted to jump into chapter 12. We're going to start talking about delivering your presentation, actually what's going to be required of it. Give me 2 seconds. So in your PowerPoint, they talk about different types of how you deliver a presentation. So one of the ways you can deliver a presentation is a manuscript speech, right? A manuscript is you just type that bad boy out, you read from it. I don't know if anyone ever had to do the Canterbury Tales, had to memorize anything, any passage of reading, right? So if you were in an English class, a manuscript would be you stand up and you read that bad boy exactly as is, word for word, right? It's not the most interesting format of presenting a speech. It's usually pretty dry, doesn't allow a lot of eye contact, doesn't allow a lot of connection with the audience. But there are types and ways that you need to deliver a manuscript speech. I think a lot of things that are done off the cuff, if you watch like the White House press corps or anybody who is delivering news, they are doing a combination of that and also the next type, which is memorized. Okay, so memorized is you have the speech, the full speech committed to memory. This is like what they do with the State of the Union. A good chunk of it is memorized, right? Because by the time President Trump or President whoever, at this point, President whoever goes through and presents that speech, they have read that speech through 20, 30, I don't even know how many times. And they've also worked with the speech writers to present it. And so they are doing a hybrid of a manuscript or a memorized. And so a lot of times when somebody is presenting on TV, they've got the teleprompter, they've got the full speech there, and they can read off of it. So you'll see some really important press conferences, even probably like what Tim Cook will do for Apple. He's probably got a teleprompter where he's got the points like up there, and he's reading off of them and remembering. There's the also improvise and impromptu. That's when someone comes in and they're just having to deliver off the cuff, whatever they can do. It can be a little bit harder to create the correct speech cohesion with that. And a lot of times there will be maybe like questions that come in it, but either way, they're just speaking off the cuff. Extemporaneous is speaking on a specific topic. You go in and you answer it directly. So someone might ask you a question, and you answer their question directly. So you maybe kind of know, like, you don't know the framework of what you're going to answer, but you just answer the question. You do the best of your ability, right? So all of those are different ways that we deliver. For us, memorized is like the most common, because you will have your outline and you will have written the points, but you're not going to, I don't want you guys to speak and read directly off of your speech, right? So what you need to know is you're going to need to have, you can have up to 5 cards, 3x5 index cards max to speak off of. Make sure they're one-sided so I can't see your speech on the back. I don't want to see, your points or your notes on the back. No more than 5 though, okay? So 5 total. What I usually do is on mine, I'll do the intro, so you can read the intro. I'll do each source with the point on a card, and then the conclusion. So it's up to you guys how you want to organize them, but it is really important to me that you don't read a speech directly from the text. So when you are going through and you're speaking, you want to make sure you have good eye contact, that you are using your gestures. You're not standing like a breadstick is what we call it, just right here in this. You guys ever go to church and see people, or go to a concert and see people who stand like this, just directly, not moving, right? You want to move and use movement and try to, survey the room. A little harder the way we're doing it with this. I understand you guys are doing the best you can with the feedback and you don't have the natural spatial difference. And so there's grace in that. I totally understand that. You always want to use your facial expressions to the best of your ability. Not everyone's expressive. That's not something I'm gonna downgrade you for, okay? I realize that everyone has my candor or delivery. And then also just make sure you look professional. The book and the presentation says you kind of want to dress one notch up from what your audience might be. So some of us are in pajamas, so definitely dress a notch up from that. But since this is a business class, I want you guys to try to dress as you would if you were giving a business presentation. You don't have to come in a 3-piece suit, assuming you would be doing Wall Street, but you should look professional, managed, neat. Imagine what you would have on if your boss just called you in to ask a question really quick, okay? Think along those lines, like, do I look presentable? Is my appearance going to be distracting from the speech? That's the biggest thing. You don't want what you're speaking on or what you're wearing to be distracting. So the PowerPoint goes into talking about addressing the media, which some of these things are really important because of the way we're presenting speeches in this format, right? So in a way, we're kind of using the same tips and points, okay? So a couple of things you don't realize when you're presenting this way is you don't need to use the gestures as largely as you would if you're speaking in person. You can tone down your posture. You can expect questions from your audience. You can it's hard to articulate this, but you don't necessarily want to be speaking to the whole room. You want to speak to some of the room and the camera, right? You also do not want to stare directly at the camera the entire time if you have feedback. This is in media. So in media, assuming you have an interviewer and you have other people in the audience, okay? So there's some combination of that. In this class, if you're staring at the camera the whole time, that makes sense. So I'm not gonna dock you for that. But if you were being interviewed by somebody, let's say your business was really successful and you went on to any reputable news source and the anchor is talking to you, you don't want to stare directly at the camera while the anchor is coming at you from the side. You want to make eye contact with them, flip-flop back and forth between the camera and the person asking you questions. So just so you come across as authentic. Okay, so now I'm going to go over really quick your informative speech. So you guys have, in your weekly lessons, you have the discussion board that has, sorry, really quick. You have the discussion board that has your subject, right? So you're going to be selecting an informative topic that is business related. So I used this, first of all, if anyone doesn't know how to do this, go to Create Thread. That's how you submit something in a discussion board. So here are a couple of different ideas that the district has put out there. So nonverbal communication skills that benefit workers. Some of this is stuff that would be directly from class. Talking about workforce reductions in different industries. I'm going to be presenting to you guys on how restaurants, particularly a restaurant I worked with and did their marketing, how they handled the COVID response. So something really interesting would be if you worked for a business that was affected by the pandemic or COVID-19, you could go through and give us a play-by-play of how your company handled it. You don't have to tell us. So the difference in informative and persuasive would be an informative presentation is, this is how my business handled this. A persuasive presentation would be, my business did not handle it well or did handle it well. Do y'all see the difference in that? So I want you to remember, informative is just facts. You're just doling out without an opinion. You're not trying to guide the audience in a particular way or leave them with a view or vantage point that is different than maybe when they came in. So there's a couple of examples up here in the discussion board that you can use to kind of get tracking. I would love you guys, by the end of this week, I want your subject up there ready to go so I can look at it. And then next week we'll have the outlines. I would love your outline by Thursday so I know what you're presenting on. We're gonna do this first presentation in front of a camera. You can either submit it to Blackboard, or you can create a YouTube page, or you can videotape it on Zoom. You can do a Zoom videotape and record it that way. Either way, you'll have to submit it to Blackboard, okay? So we're not doing this live in front of a live audience. We're just doing it a recording, okay? Hopefully that helps some nerves. To give you some criterion for the first one, the first speech, it's got to be 3 to 5 minutes total. You've got to have at most 5 of those index cards. We talked about that. I want you to have one visual aid. It can be whatever you want. It can be a graph. It can be a chart. It can be a PowerPoint that you're using behind you. And however you splice that in. I don't want your PowerPoint to be a copy of your outline. I've seen people do that before, and I don't want that. So it can either be a large graphic with a quote. It can be some sort of trend graph. It can be anything. If you have questions, let me know, and I will let you know if you're headed in the right direction, okay? So you need one visual aid, that's it, and then you need 2 sources total. So you should have, if you have 2 sources, you should have at least 2 main points. So intro, point with a source, conclusion. The more you have, great. Please keep it under 5. If you can't speak, if it's only 3 to 5 minutes, you should certainly not have more than 3 to 5. You should not have more than 5 sources. So you just intro, main points, conclusion. That's it. That's what your outline is going to look like. That's what the format is going to look like for speaking. So you will be graded on the speech itself, the outline, which I'm going to give you guys an example of. Let me actually write something down really quick before I forget. And I'll have that up this week for you. An example. I would like to see that by next Thursday, just so I can feel better knowing that if you're submitting your speech by the 15th, that I've already looked through it and everything looks Gucci. But just make sure that your outline's turned in by the time you turn in your speech. Because one of the things you want to make sure you always do is give your handout to somebody before you speak, so that it's not distracting them and keeping, you got someone handing you something in the middle or after, so they can't reference it. So make sure you give it to me before you submit, or at least before I watch your speech, because I will print that out and I will grade your speech based off of that, okay? So 3 to 5 minutes. Make sure you give me your subject by the end of this week. No more than 5 index cards, at least two main points with proper sources, right? And then I told you guys I would give you the proper format. So I will do an APA format on Blackboard for you. Blackboard, excuse me, APA format example. And someone asked about MLA, and you're more than welcome to use MLA. Just make sure it's cohesive, okay? So we're going to go over, sorry, this is so much information. We're going to go over this on Thursday. And this is the actual grading rubric. So it's 100 points for this speech. And I will be grading you on whether you have an intro, a body, a conclusion, your delivery. So if you're using eye contact, body language, your vocal delivery, I want to make sure I hear you. If you stayed in the 3 to 5 minute speech, okay? Don't talk for 8 minutes. It's not that I don't want to hear y'all, and I would love to meet some of you guys properly, but 5 minutes, okay? Cut it off, shut it down, 5 minutes, okay? So then I will also go over your sources, as that's something we'll review if they're reputable, or, if you just pulled something out of, thin air. And then your visual aid, how you used your visual aid and integrated it. And then your visual aid itself will be 10 points in addition to that. So after that, the following week, you guys will review a peer's speech. And this is meant to be encouraging, so nobody freak out. But since we're not able to present, we're not presenting to a class that first time, we're going to do a peer review. And so I will put that up Monday the 16th. So If anyone has questions on that, let me know. Don't get nervous. Everybody, please be kind. And I will use the peer review as a reference point for me when I'm grading. So I think that is it in terms of providing additional information for you guys on the PowerPoint for the first chapter, chapter 12, giving you a little bit of a format of the speech itself. I'm going to specifically go over chapter 13 on Thursday, and we're going to talk about the real difference between informative, persuasive, and how you build your subject matter for that. So tune in if you can. If not, I will try to record and put it up again for you guys. And please send me any questions you have on the quiz coming up. Your extra credit will be up on Thursday. We got a lot coming up. So just make sure you email me if you have any questions. And everybody stay safe out there today. Have a good day. I hope everyone got the chance to vote. And yeah, email me. All right, talk to you guys soon.